Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I am going to make you this sweet little crystal and round trio bracelet. I'm calling this the Bella bracelet. It's the name of my daughter, and she had all of these materials kind of laying out on what she has stolen as her bead board, so I decided to kind of play around with those designs and actually make the bracelet and give it her name. She probably would have picked a little bit more wild colors, but we'll go with the ones that I have here. The Bella bracelet consists of some round trio beads. Whether or not you use faceted round trios or smooth round trios, that's up to you. If you do need any of these materials, on the left-hand side here, we'll do a little drop down for you with links so that way you can get to the materials that are used in the video if you want to shop from me online, or take it to your local Potomac Bead Company, make that little list so you know what you need. Again, you can use faceted round trios or the smooth round trios. And the round trio, if you haven't worked with it, is our exclusive 3-hold round bead. It's a 6mm bead, and we're going to be kind of decorating that on the edges with one of our other exclusive product, which is the Potomac crystals. And these are a Potomac crystal rondelle. For the round trios, you are going to use approximately 12 to 14 of the round trios. I used 12 on my bracelet here in the design, and we're going to be making the bracelet with this vintage copper color of the smooth round trio. If you want to do the faceted round trio, this one here is just the jet Picasso color. Same thing, you're going to need about 12 to 14 depending on your wrist size. If you have a smaller than average, you may even use 11. For the design, kind of holding it together and kind of making the design happen, is the Potomac crystal rondelles. Here in the little tiny sample piece, using the 2x3mm in the purple iris color. And then in our design that we're going to be making today, using the light rose color. And for that, for each round duo that you need, you're going to use 6 of your faceted rondelles. That would be in that color 2 strands of the faceted rondelle beads. 2 strands, if you want to do all one color, will get you the whole entire bracelet done. In the bracelet that we're going to be making today, we're using the light rose. We're going to need a strand and a little bit more than that of those because you're using 3 per, so approximately 76 or so crystals in that color. And then we are using a secondary color here. In the example piece, you can see all one color with that purple iris, and then here on the outside, that 2 colors using that bronze color as well as that light rose color in that AB. To highlight those beads, I'm using 8 O's in the middle. The 8O on the example piece here is the magic purple to bring out that purple iris. And here on the piece we'll be making, I used a Toho seed bead, the 8O in the Permafinish rose gold color. It's a nice pinky rosy gold that I've been really liking to use lately. 1 tube will give you plenty. You can see I still have so many grams left on this. So not too many of those. You're just using 5 in between each of your round trios, and then 5 on the ends. There's also 15 O's in the project, and for the 15 O's I've chosen to use the Miyuki, and the Miyuki color that this is the Duracoat Silver Line Persimmon. And the persimmon here is a nice peachy, almost salmon-y coral color. So that brings out the pinks that are going on in the project. In the example piece, I did use the 15 O's in the Crystal Labrador color. The other seed beads that are in place here are the new Toho Demi Rounds in the 11O. Here I use the bronze, and here I use the matte bronze to show you just kind of the difference of those colors, which make the bronze crystals really pop and go well, I think, with the vintage copper. I'm holding the whole thing together with a loop that is made out of my 15s, and then with a cup button. Also in the vintage copper color, or on the example piece here in that light violet AB. The whole piece is going to be strung on 0.006 wildfire beading thread, and I'm using white for the colors because of the clearish pink crystal. In the example piece here I used green. That's a nice thing with wildfire. They have a couple different colors that you can choose from. You're going to be using about 5 feet of that thread. To burn down the ends of the thread to get it off the roll and to kind of finish off the project, we're using a Thread Zap 2. It's great to have handy. And in addition to the Thread Zap 2, I have a pair of needle nose pliers to kind of pinch down the end of the thread in order to use my beading needles with it. This project is a 2-needle project. For those of you that like 1 needle, you can watch the video and you can easily figure out how to go from 2 to 1. But I use 2 needles so that way you can get your clasp and closures on right away. And it's 2 size 10 needles. I am working on a bead on it board here, which is nice because you can kind of transport it and it's mobile. And I'm working on it in the orchid color here. The different sizes of the bead boards are listed online too if you need any of those. So altogether, you've got your round trios, your crystals, and then your seed bead sizes of the 15, the 8 demi-round, and then the 8-0 regular seed bead. So you can see the difference between the 15, the 11, and the 8, but just the 11 is the demi-round. To get started, we're going to make little piles and get ready to create our Bella bracelet. So to get started on our Bella bracelet here, I have my 2 needles that are attached to my 6 feet of beading thread and my cup button handy and ready to pick up. To start the bracelet, I'm going to start with the cup button and then we're going to do our center row and then build on from there. The only beads that I don't have laid out that I don't need right now are my darker of my Potomac crystal rondelles. So I just kind of have them off to the side so they're not in view and they're not in my way as I pick them up. To start out with the vintage copper button, on my right needle I'm going to add one of my 15s, my crystals, and my 15s. Bring the needles together and put them through the cup button with the bowl side facing down, and both needles are going to come out the back at the exact same spot, making sure then that I have an equal amount of thread on either side of that cup button. When I'm coming out of the back of the cup button, I'm going to add 3 15-0s on my right needle and 3 15-0s on the left needle. Let those drop down next to that cup button. And then I'm going to create a V by bringing together my little stepping stone here of my 8-0 seed beads. To bring the 2 needles together, add on 1 8-0 seed bead over both needles. Separate out the needles then, add an 8 on either needle, and then bring them together to add your next 8. And then one more time, just separate them out, 1 on each needle. When I push this all down next to my button here, you can see the effect that takes place. It's almost like a peyote stitch here. We have the 1 2 1 2. From here, our pattern starts to take place. The pattern is done progressively, getting bigger and using all the materials, like I said, except for that alternate color of my Potomac crystal. Having the cup button there, I'm going to separate my needles to the right and the left and keep them separated until we join them together with one of the 8-0 seed beads like we did previously. On my needle here, I'm going to pick up my round trio. So the round trio actually has 3 holes. When you're looking at it, it has 3 holes. The reason that it had 3 holes is because we always anticipated it to be faceted, and that center hole there is what the manufacturer needed in order to facet it and make the faceted round trio. Like I did here on the example piece, I'm going to just do a smooth round trio just to show you the opposite, the other bead and what it looks like as well, since they are sister beads. One is faceted and one is non-faceted. We're going to be skipping the middle hole of the bead. So one needle goes through the right-hand hole and one needle goes through the left-hand hole. And let that drop down on your thread, pushing it down to make sure that you don't have any thread exposed. Keeping the needle separate then, I'm going to do my little crystals on the side. The crystal pattern on the side is going to be a 15-0, then a crystal, then the demi-round in the 11, crystal, demi-round, crystal, 15. So here's what it's always going to be, is that 15 crystal, demi, crystal, 15. The needle then that's coming out of the right-hand side that I picked up those beads with is going to go back through that same hole in the right-hand side, around in a circle, which is going to pop those beads so that they're hanging out right there on the right. Now it's hard to see because the crystal is a little bit lighter than the one that I used, well, a lot lighter than the one that I used here on the example piece. But because it's not a faceted round trio, it's a smooth round trio, it's going to sit a little bit more in a rounded section rather than the V section. When working with 2 needles, a lot of times you're doing mirror images. So anything you do on the right needle, you're going to do on the left. So here on the left needle, same thing. I'm going to do 15 crystal, demi, crystal, demi, crystal, and then 15. So it's always 3 of the crystals that are separated by the demis with a 15-0 on each side just to give it a little bit of color pop. Let that drop down next to my beads on the left-hand side, and then take the left-hand needle and go back through that left-hand hole of the round trio. Pull it in nice and tight, and it almost has a butterflying effect there, you can see. When I'm coming out the round trio now, I'm going to continue this pattern with my 8-0s of putting 1 8-0 on each needle, right and left, and then joining, putting 1 going the same direction through both needles. So 2 needles going through that 3rd bead. Separating out the needles then again, 1 8 on the right, 1 8 on the left. If you want to, you can also decorate these up by putting some of the demi rounds in between, either next to the individual ones or the one that's grouped together. So then you're going to have that little X pattern that is created. After we create that X pattern, keep the needles separate again and go back to add your round trio design. So the round trio gets put on, the right needle goes through the right hand hole, left needle, I'm going to put through the left hand hole, and let that drop down next to your little X of your 8-0 seed beads. Pushing it down to make sure that they stay nice and in place. Separating out the needles then, we're going to pick up our crystal pattern, which again, just picking up that nice kind of light pattern here. We're doing 15 crystal, demi, crystal, demi, crystal, 15. On the right hand side, I stay to the right, going through that right side again. The thread's coming out the top. I go into the bottom of the round trio and pull the thread back out the top again. Making sure then to push that down and pull my thread and give some tension on it. That way no extra thread is showing. And then the same thing on the left hand side. Adding in that grouping of the crystal with the demis in between and the 15-0s on either side of that crystal grouping. If you don't have demi rounds, I like kind of the color play that's going on with them. You can also use 11-0 seed beads in their place, or you can use just your 15-0s in multiple places. So if you don't have the demi round, don't fret. I know a lot of people say I use a lot of the new beads. That's because I'm inspired by the new beads. I like the new beads, but you can also use some older beads in here as well. Once you have that design, we go back to the 8-0, 1 on the right, 1 on the left. Put an 8-0 through both needles, separate right, left, and continue on adding the rest of your round trios. I've gone ahead and added all 12 of my round trios here and have the crystals on the side. And getting ready to make the loop for my cup button to sit in, I've gone ahead and repeated the pattern of my 8-0s in the X pattern, just like if I was going to continue on to my next round trio, which if you have a bigger wrist, you may want that 13th or even a 14th round trio on. To make my loop for my cup button, I am going to be using my 15-0 seed beads in that the persimmon color here. With your needle, either your right or your left, it doesn't really matter. Go ahead and pick up about 30 of these little guys. Put them on your needle, and then that'll create our loop for our cup button. After adding all of these seed beads on, let them drop down next to the 8-0 seed beads. And then we're going to pick up our needle on the other side and reinforce that loop. After I have all these beads on my thread, the thread that is coming out the left side, I'm going to go down the right 11 or the right 8-0 and down the middle 8-0 on my last little X there. And then picking up the right needle, here's where we're going to do that reinforcing. Going back through with the needle all of those seed beads that are used in the loop. Anytime you have a loop or you're doing a clasp, you want to make sure to reinforce that clasp. Sometimes with the Duracoat silver lined, the holes can be a little bit smaller because they are coating that interior hole. So if you do need, you can switch to an 11 or 12 needle. I only had one seed bead that wouldn't really go, so I just took that off and used a different one. So come down the 8-0 seed bead there at the side, on the left side, and then also out that base 8-0 bead there that brings the threads together. Go ahead and pull nice and tight. And that's going to have your loop then finished for you. You're going to make sure before you're done your loop that your button does fit through it, in fact, and that also it's not too big that it's going to slip off. Once you're there, we're going to be ready to add our next layer onto our bracelet. When coming out of that last together there 8-0, it's time for us to drop in our last crystals on the side of our X's. To drop in the crystals on the side of the X's, we're simply going to be using a demi-round and then a crystal and then a demi-round. If you want to, again, you could replace this with 15 O's, which I'm actually going to do since I'm using the darker color of the crystals and changing it up. But here on the example, if you want to see, I did use the actual demi-rounds instead of the 11 O's. To get to that part where I'm coming out, I'm keeping the needles separate down the right side and down the left side. I'll work on the right side here, and it's just going to be a mirror image on the right and the left, like most of them are when you're doing the two needles. On the right-hand side, I'm going to take the needle and go down the 8-0, go around the crystals on the side that you put in, through the 15, through the 15, the crystals, through the demi-rounds, back through the crystals, demi-rounds, and come out the crystal. When I'm coming out the crystal then, that gives me my opportunity here to catch on to the next crystal section. The pattern again can either be a demi-round, crystal demi-round, or in my case I'm going to use 15, crystal 15, and I've switched to that bronze color to bring that darker color that I used in the demi-rounds in. Switch over to the next set now of your crystals, and you're only just going to go through on the right hand side the crystal, the demi-round, the demi, and the next crystal, demi-round crystal. That drops in the crystal there right on the side, and you can see I like that pink little X that's kind of being created there on the side. So again, crystal with a 15-0 on either side. Hop over to the next set of crystals and go through all three crystals, including those demi-rounds. When I'm exiting the crystal, on goes my pattern of the crystal and the 15s, and then on to the next grouping of crystals. So once I have this all going down the right hand side, I'm going to switch over as I do like 3, switch over, do 3 on the left, 3 on the right, 3 on the left, continuing down till I come to the end of my section here, which will add those crystals right in on the left and the right on either side of my X. So on the left hand side here, go down the left hand 8, and then because this is the first one, that's where you pick up the 15. Go through the crystals and the demi-rounds. Exiting the crystal right on top of, on the side of the X. We're going to do the 15, crystal, 15, and then swap over there to the next grouping of the crystals on the same side, going through all three crystals, And then when I exit the crystal here, I'm going to get ready. Ooh, picked up the 8-0 somehow. So back out. When you're going through here, obviously you don't want to pick up that X there. Somehow I sewed through that. And you can see people still make errors and have to re-sew out. And you're just going to sew then down along the line. I'll show you what it's going to look like here with those two colors. Down along the line, adding in that darker crystal, which plays off the fun color of the demi rounds that we used on the sides of the brighter crystals. So continue along the sides here, adding in your 15s and your crystals in between your sets of 3. After adding in that last bronze crystal here, you're going to be coming out of the crystals at the very ends near your start of your cup button. We're going to use this opportunity to reinforce our cup button and simply finish off our bracelet. Because my thread is white, I'm going to keep one thread right there on this side and just come back and attach to it after I add the sides here. To add the sides, all I'm going to do is I'm coming out of the crystal here, add another 15, go up through the 8-0 right there on this right hand side. That's just going to pop that 15 in right there to step it up to the 8-0. Off the side, if you want to, you can add a crystal. I'm simply going to add 2 15s and go into the next 8, just to give it some more pink color there at the end. Up through the 8 at the very end. Well, then here's my opportunity to reinforce that clasp. Up through those 3 15s, out through the top of the cup button, also catching your needle on that first 15. Go through the crystal, and then down the other side of the cup button by going through the 15 and the cup button at the same time, going through those other 3 beads and coming down through that 8-0 again. This time when I'm coming out the 8-0, I'm going to immediately go down what was the left hand side here, and I've just rotated it a little bit, in between that open area there, adding my 2 15s, sewing down the 8-0 seed bead there. I'm going to add another 15 on, and then simply tie the 2 threads together, making sure that you have that seed bead down in place. If you want to at this point, you can also, I'm going to take the ends off my needle here to make that knot easier. I tried a couple different variations, also seeing whether or not I liked the look of an extra row of seed beads along the end, and I wasn't pleased with it, so I just kept it nice and simple like this. Simply tie off your thread there. Once you have a nice knot tied, you can go in with your thread burner here and burn down those extra thread ends. And then your Bella bracelet will be finished. When you wear the Bella bracelet, you could do multiple rows. I had gone back and forth with the idea of making it multiple rows, but again decided to keep it nice and simple. And with the easy cup button clasp here at the back, you can put it on. If you need any of the materials to do the Bella bracelet, you can go back to the beginning of this video to the little drop down that we had in order to check out the different materials that were used, and we'll do links to them on the sidebars here. Also underneath the video, there's always a description which says what the video is about. There's a little drop down that says show more. Click on that, and that will give you links to all the different products. If you need some round trios, some of the crystals, and so forth, you can either make your list or you can shop with me online. As always, you can stay connected with us both through this YouTube channel by subscribing, sharing it with friends, and also becoming a member of our Facebook group for jewelry and for beading and jewelry making. Check that out, join that, interact with other beaders. Also check us out at PotomacBeads.com. Visit one of our locations, check out all of the wonderful supplies that we have, meet our wonderful staff, and interact with us that way as well. As always, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and have fun making this round trio Bella bracelet.